Shield of California, Cigna, and HealthNet. And those 4 companies have in some form of another already agreed to provide coverage for ABA. And it's not every policy that they have, so you have to look to each settlement agreement to see what, which policies are covered. But those 4 insurance companies do have current settlement agreements with the DMHC and the DOI. So some families aren't getting their ABA covered right now through their insurance because of these new settlements.
How much of a coverage for like the whole year, or how much of a
So it depends. Depends on the individual policy. What I've seen most often is it's a 6-month time period and then they reevaluate the situation. I actually, unfortunately, just had a client today who, for the past 6 months, has gotten coverage for 40 hours per week of ABA through Anthem Blue Cross, actually. And today they were told that going forward they will only be receiving 20 hours per week because he's done so well at all his goals that he no longer needs the 40 hours per week. So, it's never a perfect solution, especially when you're dealing with insurance companies, because they do have the ability to reevaluate the situation at any given time. I mean, as does the regional center or anybody else, but they can kind of do it as often as they want, whatever it says in your policy. So what we've seen so far is that regional centers are saying you need a denial letter and you need to file an appeal. And what type of appeal they're not saying, but you need to file an appeal and prove that you filed an appeal and been denied from that appeal before we'll continue providing coverage. So do I think that insurance is a better way to go? It really is going to depend on your individual circumstances and what your particular policy says, what we can estimate the cost of the appeal process to be, or whether we can, if you have an individual policy, we can go straight to filing a lawsuit. How much you're spending out of pocket, because a lot of people's issues right now are that they don't have out-of-pocket expenses because currently they're receiving ABA, for instance, through a regional center. And if they are, then how do you file a claim through your insurance company if you don't have any out-of-pocket expenses right now? And that's, there's all kinds of like pre-approval type processes that you can go through, and your individual policy would state what that process is. But you can attempt to go through that process, but it's really tricky because if you don't have out-of-pocket costs currently, you can't file a claim because you have nothing to file a claim for. And so you can't get a denial letter if you don't file a claim. So it's kind of a really difficult circle of events that you kind of go around and around. And if people have the ability to pay those upfront costs and continue coverage for their child and pay out of pocket for ABA, for instance, then we can start filing those claims and getting denial letters. But if you don't have the ability to do that, then we have to kind of go through the back door to try to get that coverage.
What would you say is the likelihood of winning a case against insurance, and then how much does it cost to do all that?
Okay, so it's really difficult to say right now what the chances are of winning against an insurance company because of the new law, because of these current settlement agreements. I think that because of the current settlement agreements, there's going to be better and better chances of winning the appeals right now, even prior to July 1. After July 1, it remains to be seen what will happen, but obviously they are legally required to provide coverage for medically necessary behavioral health treatment at that point. So now so to finish answering your question, then I'll kind of take off on a different side note. But generally speaking, an ERISA appeal, if that's the type of appeal you're talking about, takes 20 to 25 hours, and generally the rate is $250 an hour. The other types of appeals can take different amounts of time depending on your particular circumstances. Like I said, if you can go straight to filing a bad faith lawsuit, then we can take that on a contingency fee basis, which means that there's no upfront cost to you, and we take a percentage of the recovery or the settlement. And so I lost my train of thought on what I was going to go off on a side note, so I'll take more questions until I remember. No more questions?
I don't know, it's like a statement, but like doing all, facing the district, school districts is like a whole scatterbrained, crazy world in its own, and then on top of it, when you're trying to go after the insurance company too, it's kind of like crazy, and then, if, especially like with the, if you fight a case against the district of due process, if you win, you have a chance for reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such similar things with the insurance?
You mean for attorney's fees?
Yeah.
There is. If you file if you file an ERISA appeal, from the appeal process itself, if they say, sure, you win your appeal essentially, and we're going to now provide coverage, you cannot get attorney's fees in that instance. If they deny your appeal and you then choose to file an ERISA lawsuit, if you win the lawsuit, they will provide reasonable attorney's fees, and that can backdate to the ERISA appeal process, if that makes sense. So you can recover attorney's fees for the ERISA appeal process at that point.
So similar to the due process, kind of, sort of?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. It depends where you end up with it in that process. So that's why we take a look at your policy, we take a look at how much you have out of pocket, we take a look at all of those things and honestly tell you whether it makes sense for you to go the route of filing an appeal, because it is costly. I mean, I'm not going to lie and tell you it's not costly. It is a costly process, and you would have to have enough money out of pocket to make that worthwhile.
What are your flat fee costs to review your policy?
Generally, it's $500. It's a $500 flat fee to review your policy.
Per insurance policy, like both my kids are on the same policy, so you have to just review
Yes.
it once.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
$500. I mean, I'm just wondering, what is the likelihood that's
It's
a difficult thing? They got millions.
It totally depends on what your policy says, so it's really hard to tell you right now because it's very policy dependent, and what language your particular policy has in it. But I can't answer that question until I saw your policy. But once I see your policy, then I can give you a much a better estimate. I mean, basically, without having somebody review your policy, you just don't know what your options are, or if you even have options. And my opinion is it's always better to know, even if you don't have options, at least you took the step in figuring out that you don't have options, and than not knowing.
So basically, you're saying there's no such thing as a standard policy.
There's no such thing as a standard policy. No. So even if, I get this all the time, for some reason people have this idea that the Blues are bad, okay? That Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield are bad policies to have for autism. Personally, I don't care what insurance company you have, it doesn't really matter. They will all deny your claims or not. It just depends. But even if your friend next door has, an Anthem Blue Cross policy and so do you, and you both have PPOs, and they both provide, you both have $30 copays when you go to the pediatrician, it doesn't mean your policies are the same by any means. All the insurance companies have hundreds and hundreds of policies. They all have hundreds of different PPOs, hundreds of different HMOs, and it's just very policy dependent as to what the language of your policy says. For instance, I reviewed a policy today that has a very detailed definition of medical necessity, something that I've never seen before. I've never seen such a detailed definition of medical necessity. So, for instance, what I did with this particular client is I said, okay, assuming you get denial letters, we need to then get medical necessity letters that specifically note that language. And those are the reasons that you want your policy reviewed, because, and And those are the reasons you want to file your claims as well. You want your claims filed and you want to get those denial letters because those denial letters will state a reason for the denial. And you want to know if they're denying you based on medical necessity, or because it's educational in nature, or because it's experimental, or because the most recent one I've seen quite a bit is they're saying that ABA is treatment for a learning that autism is a learning disability. So they're denying based on all these different criteria, and you want to know what that criteria is before you submit medical necessity letters, because you want to make sure you're noting the right things and you're not saying the wrong thing in those medical necessity letters that's going to come back and bite you later.
Well, a big one is speech. They're reviewing it as psych.
They're doing all kinds of things. Depending on the CPT codes and the diagnostic codes and the different things that are used, they're saying that ABA is OT, and they're saying all different kinds of things. I mean, I can't even tell you. It's not even like there's a one-size-fits-all approach to how the insurance company denies your claim. There's not. They deny based on all different reasons. And you just kind of have to know that before you can take the next step. And so personally, I like to see claims having been filed before I review policies, because that gives me a leg up in looking at different parts of the policy for coverage. So. It can be a very tedious process. And to respond a little bit to, whether it's better to go the regional center route, the school district route, the insurance route, we really decide that on a case-by-case basis. And Elizabeth and Bonnie and I, that's one of the reasons that our firm works really well together, because we have people who, I don't want to use the term specialized because that's not appropriate in law, but that have expertise in these different areas, because we can call each other and we say, okay, so this is what I think about the insurance part of this client's potential case. What do you think if they go to the regional center? What do you think how long do you think it will take, and what do you think they'll get? And then we can decide whether it's better, whether you should be attacking both at the same time, whether you should try one before the other, or whether you should say, forget, insurance and let's go the regional center route, or vice versa. That's the benefit of having lawyers who have expertise in different areas working within the same firm.
So you could schedule like an appointment to have them review your IEP and your.
Yeah, so if you want like your IEP reviewed, then Bonnie or Elizabeth review your IEP. That's what they do. I don't review the IEPs. Now that's not to say that I don't use them, when I do appeals and things like that. Although generally I don't, but I do look at them. But they will be the ones, if you want a review of your IEP, they'll be the ones to do it. Any insurance related, yes, I will do. On the back table, there are different intake forms, which is if you want a free 30-minute phone consultation. There's an insurance one, there's a special ed one, and there's a provider one. You can fill out the appropriate one or more than one, depending on what you want. And then I also have up front here, I have some handbooks and some other things if you're interested. And I never put out my business cards, so I'll get those out there too.
Do you have any more handouts?
I do. I think they're back there as well.
Okay.
Is this seminar going to be uploaded to your website?
Yes.
It is? That's how you're teaching it?
There you go. Okay? Great.